Alderman Shell Pepper.
Here.
Alderman Maroney.
Here.
Alderman Douglas.
Here.
Alderman Rozak.
Here.
Alderman Altman Cloth. Alderman Ellis.
Here.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Here.
Alderman Mulder.
Here.
Okay, sounds good. Let's roll on committee business. Consider recommend resolution 23-R315A for wastewater treatment rate adjustment. John? John Shu, thank you.
Thank you. There's two items on the agenda tonight. I think both the wastewater rate adjustment and then also just the overall 2024 utility budget. Because the wastewater rate adjustment is built into the budget, I was planning on presenting them concurrently, and then at the end of that, you can make their recommendations individually on the two
Everyone good with
items.
that? Okay, go for it.
So going in through the 2024 utility budget, just looking at the overall process, so tonight we're looking for a recommendation on both the wastewater rate increase and the overall budget. If you so choose, that is on the agenda to approve at the council meeting, or if we decide to postpone that and have further discussions, that's an option as well. So I've got some just initial slides that I just want to go over, just giving some just backgrounds on the utilities as a whole. That I always prefer to do, just since we kind of go over this in detail like once a year. So the utilities as overall, we're part of the same legal entity as the city, even though we're financially separate. Not just financially separate from the municipal city, but each of the three utilities are financially independent from each other as well. So they collect their own revenue and you cover everything from a share of the shared city administration costs as well. Overall, if you add them all together, we've got an operating budget of almost $38 million. And overall, a lot of what we do is maintaining the infrastructure to provide those services to our customers. If you add it all together, it's about $237 million of equipment that we maintain. And that's, that includes about 18,000 meters that's bringing in usage information for our customers. For our average customers, what it amounts to is basically about almost $160 a month for our customers. And as you can see on that chart, it fluctuates with the seasons, as well. So talking about the utilities specifically, some of the things that's most dependent on, we're very dependent on the weather. It's hard to predict. We don't know whether it's going to be hot or cold. This past year we had a very dry summer, so water sales were higher. Some of that's kind of hard to predict in advance, but we look at trends and we do our best. Wastewater is a little different from the other two, water and electric, in that the rates are fully set by the council, which we'll hopefully do tonight. Water and electric, those have to follow rules set by the Public Service Commission, and they're the governing body that sets and determines the rates and operating rules for those two utilities. Getting into the details of the wastewater utility specifically, we've got about 6,900 customers, and outside of the city, we also provide services to 7 wholesale sanitary districts. At the wastewater treatment plant, we treat about 1 billion gallons a year. We treat more at the treatment plant than the water that we pump out of the ground. That's normal with infiltration. They have about 122 miles of mains, and again, like I said, it's not regulated by the Public Service Commission. Of the 3 utilities, it's the largest of the 3 if you look at the valuation of the equipment. So therefore, depreciation is a huge part of their operating expense, over 1/3 of it. About 1/4 of it is payroll. And then some of the other expenses, as we've talked about over the years, they have a significant investment in reducing phosphorus throughout the watershed. They use a lot of electricity. And they also pay a share of the water utilities meter expenses. So I talked about those sanitary districts. Every year we do a detailed cost of service study. We usually adjust rates each year for the wastewater utility. That cost of service study, we used to outsource it. Now we brought that in-house. It's something I calculate each year. And part of that is because of those sanitary districts, they all have different rates because we provide different levels of service to each of them. Some of them we only bill them basically for treatment at the plant. Other of the sanitary districts, we also maintain their collection system for them. So getting into the numbers for the wastewater utility, so of the 3 utilities, only wastewater has a rate adjustment planned for the year. And so this chart that we look, this is just kind of like a walkthrough where I go through like the operating revenue from the 2023 budget and how we get to the 2024 budget, which is projected to have an operating revenue of a little bit over $5 million. We do have what's basically looks like a 6.5% projected rate increase for residential customers. As part of that rate study, we do look at like changes in flow from all of our customers. Our average residential customer, the usage is dropping, so that's why you see that negative 32,000 highlighted there. Some of the flow from our other customers, is increasing, and so that's all built into the calculations as well.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
Wastewater flow, though, is calculated based on your water usage, right?
it is. For the most
Like a
part, it is.
percentage of water usage.
What's that?
It's a percentage of water usage, right? Some percentage of water usage.
Yeah, so it's mostly, for commercial customers, it's exactly your water usage. For residential, it's your water usage, except during the summer months, because we know customers water their lawns. So we bill you the lower of your actual usage or your winter average. So on here, yeah, we do have a proposed rate adjustment, which I think the details of which are in that book there. For residential, it's about 6.5%. For some of the other sanitary districts, if you combine them all together, it works out to 3.5%. And again, that's based on a formula based on the contracts we have with them and that rate model that we've been using for a long time. Just to show a little more details of that rate increase, just to talk about it. So our average residential customer was using about 42,000 gallons a year. It's dropped to about 41.2. That doesn't seem like a whole lot. But if you look at that difference of only the rate increase, that's where we get that 6.5% increase. So it's like $1.87 a month, or under like what, $24 a year. But then once you factor in that decrease in usage, on average, it's less than $1.50 once you factor that again. And then obviously everybody's usage is different based on how much they are. But across our 8,000 customers, it's a pretty good number to work off of.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Can we go back there? Can we go, thank you. Looks like our usage is down, say 800,000, I guess that would be?
So this is like the average usage for a single residential customer.
Okay.
So that would be like 800 gallons a year.
And you're saying the rate change impact is going to be 6.5% of an increase?
Yes, like once you factor in, only factoring in the change in rates after you recognize that customers are using less. So that's how I get the 6.5%. But then if you factor in the rates are going up, but they're using less water in total, then that's where I was saying, like, once you factor that in across our customer base, it's about like 5%. But the rates alone, that's the 6.5% increase that I was trying to highlight down there. Okay. So getting into the details of the overall budget. So operating revenue with that rate increase, we're showing about a $300,000 increase in operating revenue for the wastewater utility. Again, this is going from the 2023 approved budget to the 2024 approved budget. Last year, we actually had a budgeted operating loss. And usually for the wastewater utility, our expenses come in under budget, so we weren't that concerned about it. But we did want to have that rate adjustment in there because that operating income, that's what provides the revenue for our capital projects, that we're always investing in that infrastructure into the future. So that's where that provides that additional revenue there. So you can see the increased cost for each of the utilities. Depreciation, there was always an increase of $145,000. Higher costs of chemicals for various treatment, especially phosphorus. You got wage inflation as well. Some of the things, last year's budget had 2 items that were kind of like one-time expenses. So because those came off of the budget when you're doing a year-over-year comparison, those are 2 of the things that kind of made it a favorable comparison from one year to the next. For each of the three utilities, as I kind of touched on earlier, capital investment is always a big part of what we do and plan for. So this year, overall, we've got $3.4 million budgeted of new capital projects. That's highlighted by an additional $1 million for a septic tank receiving station that we started to budget last year, and so this is an incremental amount added to that, and also some pipe replacements within the treatment plant. As you can see on that chart, though, last year, last year budget year in 2023, our current year, we did have a lot of like new capital projects, and those are still ongoing. They're not going to be completed this year. But those are things that, you know, there's that a force main that's going to be replaced that kind of parallels the Oconomowoc River, as well as, you know, the work that you can see starting on Oconomowoc Parkway. So when you kind of put it all together in a financial summary, these are charts that I show, and I'll show these for all three utilities. It kind of shows a good kind of 10-year trend. The chart on the left, that shows our operating revenue over time, offsetting by the expenses in red, with the green being the difference between our operating income or loss. And then the chart on the right, that's where we show the blue bars. That's our asset base, the valuation of the equipment that we have, divided by that operating return, that green number you see on the left, and that gives us a rate of return. So again, last year it was negative. The wastewater utility can get along with the lower rate of return. One is that their operating expenses do usually come in under budget, but their cash flow situation is pretty healthy, so that's okay for them.
Is there going to be a goal over time to get that rate of return up a little higher? I mean, now that we've kind of taken this big dip, it seems like our historical rate, if you average it when you throw out the two last years, is closer to probably 8.
Yeah, and that's a good question. Some of that could be just a result of overtime where we had our budget, where the actual expenses. So those two lowest numbers, you can see those are both budgeted numbers, not actual. And then it's something that we look at closely each year is like, in order to get us up to a high level, we'd have to have like a huge like rate increase, and based on the cash position of the wastewater utility, it's not something that we need to like do all in 1 year.
Okay.
The other thing you'll notice, that rate, that return is really low. It's a function of the big increase in assets as well, and that was what I kind of mentioned on the prior chart. When we capitalize and complete all these projects, that's what's going to push that higher, and then by definition, that drives down the rate of return a bit. So.
Gotcha.
So one thing that we always do is we compare our utility to kind of like a peer group of area utilities. So with that 6.5% rate increase, we're still very comparable and competitive with a lot of area communities as well. And one of the things that benefits us is by making those adjustments on a regular annual basis, it kind of keeps us from getting in trouble, where if we like went a long time without any changes, without any rate changes, then suddenly if we have a large capital need, you know, then you have to have like a huge rate increase, like you'll see in some communities, like what Waukesha is going on right now, is they're switching to sending their treatment to Milwaukee. Moving on to the water utility.
A few questions
Yeah,
about that.
sure.
So the sanitary districts are going up 3.5%. We're going up 6.5%. Is that traditional that there's always been that big of a gap between the two? I know it's contractual, but
Yeah. The gap does vary year to year. It's usually less. Occasionally, it's a little bit more than us, but it depends on the formula that calculates that. It's based on like our budget numbers and like how much of our budget's expenses are at the treatment plant versus like the collection system. And then there's also some like different, I think like cost of capital numbers that are like built into the formula. So there usually is a gap, and their rate of increase is usually a bit less.
and I guess I get that it's a contract, we're getting a lot of volume from them. I don't know, Kevin, is that volume, is that extremely important to get that volume from them, just to keep to amortize across our city as well then?
On the microphone, Kevin.
Like what percentage of the volume is there on there?
So on this chart, I can show you here, like here I've got like percent of total, and again, this is in dollars, not like gallons. But in terms of like revenue, it's like, those sanitary districts are like 16% of our total revenue.
Yeah, and as far as their flow and stuff goes, I mean, for us, it's not a issue with the treatment plant. I mean, they're
And there
small.
isn't any great economy, by having that doesn't really give us any other great economies within the system, or does it?
No, it doesn't give us any issues in the system, if that's what
I
you're
guess
trying to ask.
my concern is over time, you know, if we're going up 5, 6% every year, and they're contractually at 3, our residents are, you know, essentially covering the bill for those outside sanitary districts.
I mean, I'm sorry. I wouldn't say we're necessarily covering their cost, because, I mean, the rate study does factor in, like, you know, how much flow comes from the city versus the sanitary
Okay.
districts.
So you think it's fair? In your
yeah.
estimation, it's
Yeah,
fair?
I do. I think that's fair.
Yeah, they basically get charged for BOD, TSS, and phosphorus exactly the same as we're charging residential.
Okay.
Maybe another reason they shouldn't have sued us.
Yeah. One thing I would highlight is, so like our customers, you know, the charges are based on what flows through your water meter, because they're wholesale districts. Those wholesale districts, it's just billed on what volume is coming through that giant meter of that whole area. And those sanitary districts, sometimes you'll have like influent or infiltration, you know, running into that. So their volume can fluctuate a lot more than ours can. So that's why here you can see on this one, they've got the largest amount of like volume increase, even though in percentage of total customers, it's not as much. Moving on to the water utility. The water utility, just going through quickly, about 7,000 customers, almost all of them in the city. There's no difference in rates based on what type of customer you are. It only depends on how many gallons you use and what's the size of your meter. In 2022, we pumped about 647 million gallons. And most of that is sold. Some of it's used for flushing. About 6% of it is lost. That's actually fine, as the PSC wants to make sure that just stays below 15%. Financially, it's about $57 million in assets. One thing that's unique about water is this year, for the first time, over half of their asset value is contributed. And specifically what that means for us is the PSC does not allow us to earn a rate of return on those contributed assets. So that's something that factors into when we're looking at when the water utility does rate adjustment. And that's usually just basically as the city grows, those water distribution systems and the new subdivisions, those are like paid for by the developers and then contributed to the utility. We still have to maintain them and, pay for their operating expenses going forward, but, we don't pay for the installation up front. Like all the utilities, depreciation expense is a big part of it, the wages as well. Other significant things to the water utility, payment in lieu of tax that we make to the city. We've got a water tower maintenance contract and electricity used for pumping. Water utility, similar to residential, about half the sales come from our residential customers, and then you can see the rest, commercial, is about 20%. Fire protection, we added that just a couple years ago. I mean, that used to come through the city. Now it's directly charged by the water utility. So this chart, again, no rate increases or rate changes for water. So relatively flat. You can see only about only a 1% change in operating revenue, and that's just making small adjustments to the amount of volume that we're projecting. And about 4.5% increase in overall operating expenses. Again, most of it is some like wage inflation, some pump equipment, chemicals, and things like that. But relative to the size of the entire utility, not too many changes, at least on the operating side. The other side of the question is what's going on with the capital budget. So as you can see here, the water utility's got a significant investment in future infrastructure. The biggest part of that, or two big parts, one is a $3 million addition to get us closer to being finished with well 8. So $3 million, a big part of that is adding the iron filtration to well number 8. And we're looking to get that done hopefully in early 2025. The other part, and that's that pink, as you can kind of see, is way back in 2024 when we started doing like site investigation all the way to now. It's an ongoing project as well. Also, the water utility, that dark blue bar, this is now like the 7th year that we're investing over $1 million a year in water main replacements through the street projects. And that's really increased this year specifically, as we've got our, what you'd call regular road projects, but then also the large planned project for Concord Road next year. And then also ongoing work to trying to get lead lateral replacements as well. But, so the water utility is planning on borrowing funds next year for that. Looking at these charts, you can kind of see overall, like historically, we kind of had flat revenue, and then in September 21, we had a rate increase, so that, you know, as that kind of came into effect. And then, so now that's being flat, and you can kind of see our expenses over time with the resulting operating income, and, you know, as well as where that gets us. So that's projecting to have about a rate of return of 2.91% for the water utility. Where we are, water is still pretty competitive with our peer group that I have here. You know, yeah, we did have that rate increase in 2021. A lot of utilities are also making those, and you might ask, well, why are these so low? It's every city is different, but it's good to have those continuing investments in your infrastructure. Finally, the electric utility. So financially, obviously, it's the largest of 3 utilities. We've got about 11,000 meters, and we've got customers mostly in the city, but some in the 6 surrounding municipalities. It's got what I'd call like an imbalance between number of customers and where the usage comes from. It's not unusual for electric utility, though, where you can see our top 10 customers use almost the same amount of electricity as all of our 9,700 residential customers combined. That's not necessarily a problem, though, because we're not like dependent on like one single, like say, foundry or something where like if that left town, we'd, you know. So that's actually, that's looking at us compared to other municipalities that have an electric utility, that's, I don't see that as a financial risk or a problem.
Would those be like some of the distribution centers or something, like Target?
Some of those, yeah, and I mean,
The hospitals?
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't list customers by name, but yeah, we have distribution centers, centers, hospitals, you know, educational facilities as
Are large,
big
yeah.
customers in the city. And again, obviously, the rates are set by the Public Service Commission. So as you know, purchase power, it is the largest part of the utility. So that's, of the revenue we collect, about 73% of it, we turn around and pay the WPPI for that purchase power. The rest of it is for our local operations. We've got about $69 million of assets. Only about 14% of this is contributed. Of the 3 utilities, it has the largest like crew staff as well, and makes a significant payment in lieu of tax to the city each year. And that's based on the valuation of the infrastructure.
This is in addition to the other in lieu of tax.
Yeah, so the water utility and the electric utility both pay a payment in lieu of tax to the city. The wastewater utility, I think by rule, is not allowed to do that. This chart here has a whole lot of numbers on it, but what I'll start in the bottom left. So this is kind of just saying overall from one budget to the next. The operating revenue is looking to increase by about $654,000. And again, as I said, purchase power is a huge part of that, and that's something that we work with our partners at WPPI each year to try to forecast that as best we can. Obviously, it's difficult to predict what electric and energy prices are going to be next year. We don't really have much of a financial risk because of that, because every month that the cost of that power changes every month, and then every month we in turn calculate that, and that's like a line on your electric bill. If you look at it, there's something going to be like a PCAC charge. That represents like the change in the cost of power. So if that increases or decreases, that's a pass-through straight to the customers. So on here, I kind of look at once, you know, how much money do we project we're bringing in? Once we pay that WPPI bill, how much money do we have left over? So that would be this like 8 or 9.2 million to like pay our local operating costs. And some of this, like those two don't balance out completely because just like 2 months ago, we implemented a electric rate increase. And so like, you know, half of that was this year, half of that was next year. So we'll have some of the benefit in the 2024 budget when you're looking at it like year over year budget comparison. focusing on the things that we control here locally, that's kind of more the things that I've got in this bracket. And that's going up about $490,000 or about 7% compared to like last year. A big part of it is health insurance and wages, more so than the other utilities, just because they have a lot more employees. Depreciation is always increasing as we invest in our infrastructure as well. And there's some other items, some of these are specific one-time projects. One thing down here is, I worked with our, Lucas and some of our people. There's a benefit down here of $154,000. We allocate the cost of our vehicles and equipment, one little machine here you can see there. We spread those costs, and we determined that not enough of those costs were being allocated to our capital projects and like the developers we charge for those capital projects. So we're going to make an adjustment there, and that gives us an extra $154,000 of operating income once we make that change. Capital projects, so again, as you can see on the chart over this like basically 10 or 11 year trend, you can see a large increase in investment. The dark red bars at the top, those are basically distribution system investments, in the cables that bring power to your homes and businesses, and we're continuing to increase that investment as well. The numbers that we have in the budget are a little bit different than the ones that you have in the printed binder, because there was a late change that we had, and that was in the cost of transformers. This, I think in the books you have, it says it's got it at $1.3 million. We determined that needed to be increased by $1 million to $2.3 million. And so on this chart, I wanted to highlight that as well. That's this kind of orange bar in the middle. And as you can see, there's been a lot of, you hear a lot of things of like supply chain and lead time constraints as those costs of transformers to try to get them in as their costs have increased, so we can kind of meet that growth demand throughout the city. And you might hear like, yeah, there's a lot of kind of like generic terms about supply chain and lead time, but one of the things that I found is what's making that those so expensive is some of the cost of the steel that goes into those transformers. It's the same, some of the common materials that are used in electric vehicle batteries. And as demand for those increase and as government subsidizes those products, but they're not subsidizing transformers, that's kind of pushing up the cost of transformers as we need to acquire those to meet the needs of our customers.
That are needed the power to charge the batteries.
Yeah,
Drive the cars.
Good point.
that's true, So anyway, so if you look at it as a whole, it's about, we've got $5.6 million of capital investment, new capital projects, in addition to the projects that are currently going on as well. We've got some new vehicles, continuing spending on our outage management system projects as well. If you look at it on here, because purchase power is such a large component of it, that operating income looks pretty small, but that's just, you can kind of see that trend over time. So we are projecting a decrease in sales, but that's, again, that's offset by basically a projected decrease in the cost of purchase power. It's not necessarily a decrease in what you're paying today, but it's more of a decrease of what we were budgeting in last year's budget. So it's something that we're always kind of, as we're comparing last year's budget to this year's budget, as we're always showing up. But there is a resulting projected increase in operating income. And down here you can see the Public Service Commission that gives us an authorized rate of return, and that fluctuates over time. With our last rate increase, it was like 6%, and with that increase that we just implemented, this gets us closer to that to provide that additional revenue above our operating expenses to pay for those capital projects. And then also with each of the utilities, I always compare our rates to other communities. In prior years, I would always just compare us to like We Energies, and I wanted to just touch on it a little bit more because, yeah, we know our rates are lower than We Energies. But when you look at it compared to those same communities, you can see where we are. Our rates, overall for a residential customer, it's about $30 a month less than We Energies. And once you extrapolate that over a year and all of our customers, we're saving our residential customers about $3.5 million a year. Our commercial rates are also a bit lower and competitive as well. Once you look at our peer group who are WPPI member communities, we're right in the range, maybe a little bit on the higher end, but that could also be, again, 2 months ago, we just implemented a rate increase, and that's something you do maybe every 2 to 4 years, so like maybe before that, we might have been lower in this range as well, so. So that's what I've got for the slide presentation, but if you have specific questions, on any of the detailed numbers, I could help you with that. I could entertain that.
Just a general question about, with the electric utility specifically, because there's so much of purchasing of the electrical, what effect does inflation have on our ability to purchase? Is that set, those rates set, or is it also adjusted per inflation as well?
Do you mean like the inflation in
Just
the?
general inflation in the marketplace. I mean, does that affect our ability to purchase electrical?
It certainly does. So I mean, any inflation in the cost of power from WPPI, that's like passed through every month directly to our customers.
No matter
But-
what?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So that's a calculation I do every month, once I get the WPPI bill. Overall inflation, whether it's like the cost of transformers or any other equipment or my salary or whatever, any other kind of
Right.
inflation, that's something that is not factored into that. So that's something that every 2 to 4 years when we go for a new rate increase with the PSC, it's addressed through that.
Gotcha. Okay.
Excuse, you
Yeah.
talked about the water, and you had mentioned that it was a 4.5% increase with the water budget?
6.5.
Wastewater had a 6.5% increase.
Oh, that's
rate increase,
wastewater,
yeah.
okay.
That-
Okay, and basically those increases are based on what necessarily?
Just changes in our operating expenses and also an additional return on top of that to cover capital projects.
Any other questions or comments on either the wastewater treatment rate adjustment or the 2024 utility budget? Alderman Ellis.
So, general question, what if we wanted to keep that flat and we didn't have that 6.5% rate increase? What would happen?
Basically, the wastewater utility would have less revenue in its simplest terms. So, I mean, so going from revenue from one year to the next, it's showing basically that rate increase is providing about $256,000 of additional revenue. And it's something that we try to do like incrementally each year instead of like, because water and electric, they're regulated by the PSC, going through that process, sometimes it takes almost a whole year just to get an adjustment in rates approved. So then when we do that, sometimes it becomes like a larger increase. So by making kind of incremental, small annual adjustments, that's what we try to do to avoid any like large financial shocks to our customers. And that's what,
But it seems as though, according to your diagrams here, that there's less water usage than more. And we're going to be increasing our, in this case, 6.5% more. So I'm kind of confused. What if we went ahead and we had more? Let's turn that around a little bit and say that instead of it being less, that we had more usage. Would that number would have been lower, or would it still would have been 6.5%?
It could move in either direction based on how usage changes, and it's
Not
something
answering my question.
What's that?
It's not answering my question. My question is, would that number would have been lower if we had had more usage?
Yeah, it probably, if usage was higher, then yeah, it could have reduced the amount of increase, the rate increase.
Because my understanding is that we're setting a rate based on what we're gonna need to cover, like, our operations and capital projects, right? And so, the answer to the question is, if we didn't raise the rate now, the capital projects are inevitably gonna be required, just based on, I mean, that's the services we provide. The money wouldn't be there to fund them, so we'd have to raise the rate by a higher amount all at once to cover it, right? Or borrow, right, there you go.
Yeah, that's
we
correct.
We wouldn't even have the money to do it, right, yeah.
And
So we wouldn't be
But
able to
my-
fund necessary projects
Okay.
that would be
but-
required.
And I appreciate that answer, thank you. However, are we also taking into consideration the amount of savings we have at this point in time in the utility department for purposes of funding future projects? Because it just seems to me every year we're adding more into our quote-unquote savings and not utilizing it the way I feel as though it should be.
And it is something that we evaluate each year as we go through the process to determine, how much, how should rates be adjusted to provide, to cover our operating expenses, and then also provide that amount to like fund the capital projects to kind of continuously invest in that infrastructure. It is something that overall, like the utilities, especially water and electric, a lot of their costs are somewhat fixed relative to volume. So that's something that we do look at in terms of like, let's say, if you drink less water, that doesn't change my salary or anything like that. So it's something that we do in that calculation that says, if there's less, if we sell less water, that price per gallon that we charge might have to increase, if
I
we
understand
extrapolate
that, but okay, so let me be more specific. How much do we have right now in savings?
I'd have to check.
We use reserves on a pretty regular basis for large capital projects.
For big projects,
For
yeah.
all of our capital projects, we haven't borrowed since I've been here, so. every time we-
That's the ultimate answer is the rate of return, the extra money we're bringing in has allowed us not to borrow for those projects, which means we're also saving additional, borrowing costs associated with that.
One of the questions you were asking about flow, so if the flow number goes down, that doesn't change the amount of money I have to run the treatment plant. So if it's $300,000.
I know, you've got your fixed expenses, I'm aware of
Even
that.
if you guys use less water, your rates are gonna have to go up in order to make that same dollar amount, because it costs that much to treat the water.
Thank you.
Other questions? Karen?
Just thank you so much for all your hard work on this every year, John.
Yeah, this is really, it's a great presentation.
Fantastic.
A lot to understand. You've got
So, there's a couple things going on tonight, but first of all, thank you for recognizing John, but as John will also tell you, that we have an entire staff that works very hard on the budget for quite a few months. Most of them are sitting in the room here with Lucas, Scott, Joey, and Kevin, putting together their numbers on how they need to operate their respective utilities. So they do an excellent job. We're very proud of our utilities here and the work that we're able to do with what we're charging our residents. As John mentioned, we're looking at a $3.5 million overall savings versus if they would be in We Energy. So that's quite significant when you look at that. So tonight we had, a couple things. One is approving the resolution for the rates, which then determines the budget, but also it comes down to whether or not the council is comfortable in taking action on the utility budget tonight at council. We do have an agenda item for that. And if you're comfortable on both of those, then it would be a recommendation for the common council to then act on that later on tonight for both the rate increase and the utility budget.
Next year, can I get a budget book that looks like that with a little binding on it and stuff?
It's pretty cool looking.
when I finally know what a digester cover is, I'm pretty excited about
Yeah,
that.
there it is.
Would anyone,
That's another 6.5% increase, though, guys.
could I receive a motion for the resolution on the wastewater treatment rate adjustment?
So
A
moved.
recommendation?
So moved on that.
Second.
Any further comments or questions? Call roll, please.
No, wait, I'm confused. What are we voting on?
On the proposal.
Wastewater rate increase.
It's a recommendation.
It's a recommendation to go to council. Because we're in committee of the whole.
Right, I do know that.
You good? Call roll, please.
Alderman Shell Pepper.
Aye.
Alderman Maroney.
Aye.
Alderman Douglas.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Altman Cloth.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Mulder.
Aye.
As our city administrator mentioned, if you'd rather wait and spend more time with the utility budget, we can place a vote for passing the utility budget in 2 weeks. But if you're comfortable where we are, I'd entertain a motion to recommend the 2024 utility budget go to council after this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Alderman Shell Pepper,
Aye.
Alderman Maroney,
Aye.
Alderman Douglas,
Aye.
Alderman Rozak,
Aye.
Alderman Altman Cloth,
Aye.
Alderman Ellis,
Nay.
Alderman Spiegelberg,
Aye.
Alderman Mulder.
Aye.
With that, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn, and we'll start the council meeting at 7:30.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We have the closed session?
That's
No.
at the end of
At the
council.
end of council,
Why can't we go into closed session now?
because it's not part of the agenda. council meeting for Tuesday, November 7th, 2023. Has appropriate meeting notification been made?
Yes, Your Honor, it has.
Would all of you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Call roll, please.
Alderman Shell Pepper. Here. Alderman Maroney. Here. Alderman Douglas.
Here.
Alderman Rozak.
Here.
Alderman Altman Cloth. Here. Alderman Ellis.
Here.
Alderman Spiegelberg. Here. Alderman Mulder.
Here.
At this time, I'd like to open the public hearing for the 2024 City of Oconomowoc proposed budget. The purpose is to hear public comment on the proposed 2024 City of Oconomowoc budget. Mr. Fry.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just give you a real brief overview of the budget process that we went through to get us to the point here tonight. You may remember that our budget process started back in May and June when we met and had preliminary discussions on directions that we thought that the budget should be looking at and the priorities that either the department heads or the aldermen had in mind. So we worked through that, then put together the preliminary budget. Finance director and I had to reduce the requests that were made by about $260,000 in order to meet the levy limits that are imposed on us by the state of Wisconsin. During the October workshops, there were some minor adjustments made. A lot of the work at the workshops involved the use of unexpected revenues that we had that came in with the interest that we received and then also our building permits. And then new this year, we had an additional shared revenue of $442,000, of which $325,000 was left for the council to decide how they wanted to use those funds. Overall, the meetings in October were about 3 hours each night, so 6 hours from the council was spent on this. I thought the whole process went well, and some of the highlights out of that. And as noted here, we have a proposed levy of $16,132,660. Our tax rate is going to reduce from $5.11 to $4.71. As I mentioned, some of the unexpected revenues were used to offset the $1.5 million estimated cost to resurface Concord Road. This is allowing us to complete that project without doing a borrowing, which is an overall savings of just over $300,000 to the ratepayers. We have capital expenditures where we were using $400,000 of our ARPA funds, and that'll be the last of those dollars. But we're also looking at using $600,000 from our unrestricted reserves. That's a balance that's grown a little bit because of some of the unexpected revenues that come in, like building permits or interest. So overall, it's a very good budget. Looking at the average value house in the city of $400,000 based on valuations, they're going to have a tax of city portion property tax of $1,883, which is an increase of about $94. These were some of the facts that I had already walked through. I did miss that we're adding some employees. We're adding one full-time employee to Public Works and one for utilities, and then having a full-time marketing person for tourism. And that does not come out of the levy budget. That comes out of the tourism budget. But we are maintaining all of our current city services. So tonight we're going to be looking for approvals on two things. One is the 2024 city budget that we've spent quite a bit of time on, and then there will be a separate item to set the levy at the $16,132,660. And one thing really I noticed was, at that $1,883 for the average house, that's, somewhere in that $159 a month. That's the average utility bill in the city. So I thought that was interesting out of John's conversation. So that's all I have on the budget for the public hearing.
Thank you. I'd like to open up the public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to make a comment about the proposed 2024 city budget? Any comments from the audience? With no comments moving forward, we're going to close the public hearing for the 2024 city budget. And I'd like to entertain a motion for approval of minutes for October 17th, 2023.
So moved, Altman Cloth.
Second, Ellis.
All in favor? Opposed? Without objection, I'd like to bring forward the three mayoral appointments before our next presentation. Any objections? We have three appointments to volunteers that are going to be working with us this year for your consideration. We have Dan Rogers and Trevor Stiles for the CDA and Louise Sossin for the Police Commission. Trevor and Louise are both here. Dan Rogers apologizes, he's out of state on business and could not attend the meeting. Like to entertain any comments from any of the council members that you may have. And at this time, if any one of the appointees would like to come up to the podium, you're welcome to do so. Would anyone like to speak with any of the appointees?
Can I just ask a question about the police commission
Yes.
appointment? And so that's a replacement for Jennifer Holsupple, and she was here like a year ago?
Yes.
What prompted that?
She made a decision that she couldn't maintain that work, and so she resigned.
Okay. Well, I think it's important we have, consistency and commitment on that commission. It has significant oversight over the hiring, firing, and discipline of, our police department. So, Louise, I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to call you before, but are you going to be able to maintain the commitment here till April 2028?
I'm honored to be considered for the role, and I plan to be very dedicated, yes. I'll take it very seriously and give it my total concentration and effort.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Sure.
Alderman Altman Cloth.
Just curious, how did you find out about this position, and tell me about your application
How did I find out
process?
about it? I found out about it in my Sheepshead group, and people were just talking about it, and I had been looking for a volunteer role. So that's how. Thank you.
Do you want to just introduce yourself a little bit and just tell us a little bit about you? Because I think let's start off maybe that way.
Sure. So I am very honored to be considered for this role, and I did hand out a little information sheet to everyone, and I hope that you got that. And so I'm thank you for your consideration. And let's see. I guess my biggest experience that I would have for this is I taught for about 15 years at WCTC, and I had quite a few students who planned to become police officers. And so I did have an experience with working with potential police officers and evaluating them and grading them and interacting with them, and they were wonderful students. And so that gives me a little background into working with hiring police officers and so forth.
Thank you. And in the packets, they have your resume and they do have your application, so you're aware.
Okay, good.
Any other questions from councilmen? Alderman Rozak.
Sure. This isn't for you necessarily, but I do have a question for you. I didn't have a chance to ask for a phone number, but we get the packets without phone numbers, so we don't get a chance to call these people ahead of time and chat with them, which I have done in the past, so I apologize for not being able to do that. This is but a question for you. I mean, this is a very, very important position and can be very stressful. The police commission is really the only stopgap between the citizens and the police department. Not that you may have to hopefully never do that, but the police commission takes the role of essentially monitoring, controlling, firing, hiring, disciplinary actions, all the way up to the police chief. Do you feel that you have competency and the capability to handle that role?
I do. I would take it very seriously, yes.
Have you been in a situation or role where you've hired or fired people before?
Well, for our homes, we've hired and had to fire people, and that was, you know, a couple $100,000 sometimes. So in that case, yes. I've also had experience on disciplinary boards at WCTC, where I had to sit on a board and decide on a disciplinary measure for a student because of plagiarism or something else like that. So I've had that experience too, but I would take it very seriously.
Did you, out of curiosity, did you ever vote to expel a student for plagiarism or any of those things?
So we followed the rules, and there were various levels, and sometimes it was without getting too specific.
Sure, of
into
course
their
not. Right,
rules.
right.
But I did have to vote to take action on some students, yes. I
Did
think
you-
what else? We hired people when I was on the park committee for Neshota. We hired all kinds of people, and we never fired anyone, but we hired people, yeah.
Have you talked to anybody else on the police commission?
I have. I haven't talked to Mike Miller yet, but I do know him. And I have met with Margie Krowski, who is a past president,
Right.
and got a little bit of information from her.
So you know Margie, the former, I think she was on for 17 years on the police commission?
I don't know, was she on that
Yeah.
long?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, the other last question I had, have you met with the police chief or police captain prior to
I
getting?
have not met with the police chief. I have.
And I'm not asking you to reveal if you've been pulled over for speeding or anything like that, you know?
No, I haven't. I haven't met with the police chief, but I have met with a police officer and one of the lieutenants and a couple other police
As part of
officers.
this police commission appointment?
No, not as part of the
Okay.
police commission appointment.
So you haven't had a chance to meet them?
No,
Okay.
I have not. Not in terms of the commission, right?
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Stiles, would you like to come up?
Okay.
Thank you very much, Louise.
Thank you.
Trevor, if you could just do a brief introduction, that'd be great. And thank you both for coming and, giving back to our community.
Sure. Good to see you, Mayor, Council. I don't have any of my neighbors with me this time. It's just me. Trevor Stiles. I found out about this position from talking to my alderman, Matt Rosick. Talked it over with him, sounded like something I'd be very interested in doing. So I'm an attorney by practice. I've been doing infrastructure development for about 15 years, first in private practice and then at a utility. And ironically enough, I saw that one of our board members is here tonight for ATC, so I may stick around for the utility readout as well. But that's how I got interested in the opportunity and then applied for it.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions or comments for Trevor?
Another attorney?
Yeah.
Never have enough, Mayor.
I am not going to hold it against him. He's a good guy. Any other?
No, my comments for Trevor is I've been talking and discussing with Trevor for probably, a year or two with regard to our issues with the Olympia development, very knowledgeable, a good, I would say, community kind of organizer in that area, was influential with the group out there, and I'm glad that you were able to apply and, add some of your time to the community. We appreciate that, so thanks.
Any other comments? Okay. And again, thank you very much, Trevor. Again, Dan Rogers was not able to come here. I've known him for over 30 years. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have anything from Dan Rogers. He's an HVAC commercial contractor that's lived here for well over 30 years.
My general, Dan, he sounds like a nice guy. He doesn't have a resume. That's not the end of the world. I've taken the position of if someone's going to be here on one of these positions, they should be here in person. So I would recommend that we just bring him back when he can make it. I don't think that role in the CDA is this hypercritical that we couldn't wait another 2 weeks for him to be here. I personally like the chance for the people we're voting on to see them and look them in the eyes and talk to them, even if it's just for a minute or 30 seconds.
And he said he'd be happy to come, so it's not a big deal. It's trying to move these things forward so that we can get these replacements in place. So I'd like to entertain a motion.
Well,
I'd like to make, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I'd make a motion then to approve Trevor Stiles and Luis Sosin, sorry, is that the correct pronunciation, Sosin? Okay, Trevor for the Community Development Authority and Luis for the Police Commission, and then we'll hold off on Mr. Rogers until he can make it.
I'll second that.
Any further discussions or comments? Call roll, please.
Alderman Shell Pepper.
Aye.
Alderman Maroney.
Aye.
Alderman Douglas.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Altman Cloth.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Mulder.
Thank you very much. We'll come back to comments and suggestions from citizens, and we're going to start and kick this off first with a WPPI energy update from Mike Peters. Mike.
And Mike is the president and CEO of WPPI. Usually on an annual basis, they go around and hit all the communities that are members of that organization. So he's here tonight to give us an update.
So thank you very much for getting some time on your agenda tonight. That presentation says Sturgeon Bay Utilities. It may not surprise you that I've done this presentation multiple times already this year. I did not bring a copy on a flash drive, but I had an email copy that I used 2 weeks ago to send to Sturgeon Bay. So your tech guru over there quickly pulled it together. I sent him the Sturgeon Bay Utilities. It's the exact same presentation. The only difference is the initial slide. So with that, I'll walk.
As long as next year when you go to Sturgeon Bay,
I will
it says
use
Oconomowoc.
on Sturgeon Bay next year.
And we'll call
Just,
that even.
and
Jim will like that.
Exactly. Yeah, it's fairness. It's only fair.
Yeah.
So I will do that. It might surprise them a little bit. So just a little background about WPPI Energy. So for those of you who may not be as familiar with the organization, we are your wholesale power supplier. And sometimes I get a question, well, what difference does that make to us as a community? Your typical customer's bill is made up of about 75 to 80% of power supply cost. So when you get a $159 bill, about $120 of that is the power supply piece. The balance of that is your distribution cost to maintain the poles and the wires and the trucks and the employees locally. And so we're a big part of what your customers pay when they pay their monthly electric bill. So that's why you're concerned about it. That's why your staff is highly engaged with WPPI on a regular basis. And that's why we have the partnerships that we do. We are a 51-member organization. We were created in 1980. At the time we were created, municipal utilities had really two options for power supply. They either owned their own generation, and there's a couple of those municipals in the state of Wisconsin that still have some of that legacy generation around, or they bought from the investor-owned utility that surrounded the municipal utility. There was no real other option. Even if you could find power supply from a distant utility, there was no way to get it across a transmission system without paying multiple rates to get it to make it cost effective. And so in the 70s, as this was happening across the country, and prices were going up pretty quickly, municipal utilities saw an opportunity to band together, form a larger organization than what they were individually, so that that larger organization could negotiate power supply contracts on behalf of the group. We could own assets larger than what any one individual member of a municipal utility organization like ours could own on their own. And that economies of scale helped to better manage power supply. It put power supply decisions back in the hands of the municipal utility owners of an organization like ours. We started out with 23 Wisconsin utilities and started in 1980. Today we have 51 members in 3 states. We have 41 members in Wisconsin. We have 7 in the UP and Michigan and 3 in Iowa. We have a 51-member board of directors. As you can imagine, it can be a little challenging to have a board that large. So the board meets 3 times a year, typically, sometimes more if necessary, and the large issues that affect the overall membership are reserved to the board. Like they approve our wholesale rate each year in December. So they will review our recommendations and they will make that approval. They approve our budget, just like what you all have just talked about. We bring a draft budget to our board of directors. and the board is the one that approves that budget. They approve big contract issues. If we're going to issue debt, the board has to approve us issuing debt. They approve member contract issues. So if we wanted to add a new member, or if we were going to extend our member contracts, the board has to approve that. Beyond that, the other actions have been delegated to an 11-member executive committee. Joe Pickard, your most recent manager, sat on our executive committee. The executive committee meets every month, sometimes more often than that, and they really act more like the governing body for the day-to-day interactions of the organization. I report to the executive committee and the board, and we have a staff of about 120 employees. First and foremost, from our standpoint, you are the utility. We are in the background to support our members. Your customers probably don't know who we are, and that's perfectly fine. We went through a exercise a couple of years ago to re-examine our mission and vision statements, and we wanted to make sure that we put our members first. And so in both instances, member utilities is in the first line of both statements. You're the utility, we're here to support you, and all the staff sees ourselves as an extension of your staff. Most of our members are relatively small utilities. Oconomowoc is actually one of the larger utilities, but even in that instance, you don't have a lot of the type of staff that we would have, like professionals that do rate case work, professionals that do engineering work on distribution systems that work with your local utilities on distribution planning, meter techs that are very skilled, and that's all they do is they work with the new technology. Billing system support people that they make our billing system, which you all use, operate behind the scenes so that when your staff have questions or issues, they can reach out to our staff. So you are the utility. We're here to support you and support our members. But we definitely want to make sure it's very clear that we stand behind the members. We wouldn't exist without the membership, and so our employees understand that relationship. We are just like you. We do planning constantly. We operate on a 5-year overarching business plan approach, and so in 2021, we had 11 regional meetings where we invited all of our members to come to one of the meetings, talk about the industry, talk about the next 5 years, 10 years, where they saw the industry going, what issues they were facing locally, and what role should WPPI play in supporting our membership. And from that, we drafted a 5-year business plan that's sort of the overarching document. It's a very high level. Each year then, we develop work initiatives that will advance that plan. We take those initiatives to the executive committee for their review and more or less blessing, and then we report quarterly to the executive committee on how we're meeting our objectives for that year. In reality, we focus on 3 things: reliable, cost-effective, responsible power supply, services, and then effective policy advocacy. Those are the 3 areas that we focus on and our business plan revolves around. The top initiatives as an organization for 2023, really the only one that I'll probably talk about, the 2, long-term resource planning. We have been fairly well positioned over the last 10 years with resources. We had some small pieces that we could add to the portfolio, but we didn't need to make any really big decisions. That's starting to change in the late 20s and into 2030. We have some very large contracts. Point Beach Nuclear, for instance, is a large power supply contract that expires in 2030 and 2033. We have a number of renewable contracts that will be 20 years, and they terminate in 2027, 28, 29. And so at the end of this decade and in early 2030, we're going to have a lot of open space. We're starting to plan now and discuss what do we want to put into our portfolio to meet our member requirements, our member load requirements going forward. So we're doing a pretty deep dive on planning today. We're actually using some software that we haven't used before. We have staff that's been trained on that will give us a lot of data, a lot of information. It isn't a crystal ball. What it is, it gives you guardrails. It lets you do scenario planning. If we want to have more renewables, if we want to have a portfolio that is, heavily concentrated in one particular asset or another. It shows what the current costs are for certain types of generation. If we want to plan for, a reduction in carbon emissions by 2030, 2040, 2050, we can build those scenarios into the plan. And then when we actually go out to add resources, we can use that as a touchstone. What does our plan say? What does the market responses say? And then we can make sure that we're on the right path. The other area that we focused on in 2023 is member interconnection process for solar. Oconomowoc is one of our members that have seen an increase in the number of customers wanting to install rooftop solar. WPPI is ambivalent to that. We want to help our members, whatever you want to pursue locally, but it does take a lot of work. From your staff's time, Energy Service Manager's staff time, that's the employee, Greg Hoffman works for you all as an employee WPPI. As you have more customers that want to do solar on their rooftop, they're asking, they have to file, for permits, they have to file for applications, they have to, make sure they have insurance that covers, the liability risks. There's some interconnection issues that need to be reviewed by your city inspectors, that type of thing. That takes a person making sure all of those processes take place. It takes staff time. And as we've seen the number of interconnection requests go up amongst members, again, Oconomowoc's one of the ones that have seen a lot more of these, it's taking more and more of your staff time. So we wanted to do two things. One is, can we standardize the process across our 51 members and come up with a best practices manual? All of our members to some extent have dealt with this, and they all have done it differently, but there's some ways that, we can standardize the forms, we can standardize the process. And so we put that manual together with input from our members, and that's available now to our communities, and Oconomowoc has that. The next step is, can we automate some of this? Can we put it online so that a customer can get a lot of the information on their own? They can go onto your website, they can fill out the application process, they can pay any interconnection fees, they can see what they need to do step by step through the process. That takes the burden off of your staff, and it allows the customers to get information at the time that they would want to and need it, and then track that process through the software. So we're working on having that software either late this year or early next year. We're looking at platforms that will work across our 51 members, and we're hoping to be able to roll that out. Again, it would be on your website. It would be, it would look as if it is you, because it is. And the information would be available to Oconomowoc. We can generate reports. There's a lot of reporting that has to be done annually on solar PV, so that this report can generate that. And so that's another initiative that we're working on this year. So probably the one issue where we get the most questions is power cost. Where are we going? I can tell you that the last 2 or 3 years has been very challenging. Obviously with COVID and the pandemic, you would think that power supply costs would go down because demand had dropped. But what we saw in 2021 was a run-up in natural gas prices that were unanticipated. Typically, we don't see gas prices at the levels that we saw in 2021. It's been a long time. And so we had saw gas prices, which we're not a gas utility, but natural gas sets the margin or the cost of power supply on the open market. And we do buy power on the open market. So we saw gas prices at 100% above what we anticipated them would be. And so that drove our average cost up about 10%, where we were exposed somewhat to those higher costs. So we got through 2021 into 2022. Our budget, we ended up 2022 about 9.5% above budget. We expected costs to drop in the summer of 22, and they didn't. They went the other way. So as we budgeted for 2023, we just assumed gas prices would stay high. We were wrong again, but this time we were wrong on the right side of it, and gas prices actually plummeted back down to what they were in 2019, 2020. And so we're actually right now 10% below budget for 2023. Our prices are they're in between what they were in 21 and 22. We are taking a draft budget to our executive committee this coming month. Our executive committee meets next week. We have our next iteration of the draft budget. We're looking at a increase for 2024 that's about, as you said, we're 10% below budget. And so we're looking at a budget-to-budget change of about 3.5% to 4%. And so it's, our rate will be higher than what it is actual today, but be about 5-6% below what we budgeted for 2022. So it's going to be about $78 per megawatt hour, where we finished 2022, it was $82 a megawatt hour. So we're going back down a little bit. And then if we had a better crystal ball, I could tell you what it would be, the next couple of years, but we've proven that that is very difficult to estimate over the last couple of years. Power market prices were, up until that point, up until 2021, very stable. You could predict almost within a couple of dollars what they were going to be. We saw, as I said, prices 100% above what we anticipated. So it's been very challenging over the last couple of years. Talk about WPPI's portfolio. As you see these two pie charts, in 2010, we had about 62% coal in our resource mix. Due to changes in our contracts that we have, we've been dropping pieces of our contract that were coal heavy, and we've added more natural gas to our portfolio and more renewables. And so today, we're about 34% coal, about 20% natural gas and 20% nuclear, and about 25% renewables. The difference between we have renewables and we have renewables no RECs. It's the same, it's still wind or solar, but we sold off the renewable energy certificates to get added value for that resource and reduce our wholesale rates to our members. It didn't change the nature of the power supply. We just sold off the excess renewable energy certificates that we didn't need to comply with the Wisconsin RPS Renewable Portfolio Standard or a Michigan RPS, but we brought value back to WPPI above and beyond the reduced costs that we got. This will continue, this amount of coal will continue to reduce. We have ownership interest in 3 different coal plants, 2 of them in Oak Creek and 1 in Minnesota. The primary owners of those plants, WEPCO in the instance of the Oak Creek plant and Minnesota Power for that plant that we own a piece of, have both announced that they're transitioning away from coal. WEPCO has made a public statement, have already taken steps to transition that plant to natural gas by 2030, and then 100% natural gas by 2033. And so you'll see this coal slice reduce even more. Minnesota Power said they're going to transition that plant to non-coal. We anticipate it'll be natural gas in the same time frame, 2030 to 2035. So by 2035, the only sliver of coal we'll have left in our resource mix will be whatever we buy in the wholesale power markets themselves. When we make a purchase from the wholesale power market, we can get the data on what's in that mix from the primary or the marketer, MISO, the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator that runs the overall power markets for 15 states. They can tell us what's in the mix generally, and so we'll attribute that. But because the way our portfolio will be, my estimate is probably by 2035, we'll have less than 10% of coal in our resource mix. You'll see more natural gas, and you'll see more renewables. Questions on our resource mix? We have a goal of reaching 100% carbon-free by 2050. We don't have an interim goal, but as I said, with the direction our portfolio is going, we're going to be pretty aggressively reducing our dependence on carbon, on coal in that 2030 to 2035 timeframe, regardless of what steps we take.
Well, then I have a question on that, if I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
You
Go
know,
for it.
Yeah.
So you said there was a state renewable portfolio standard that we have to comply with. What does that tell us the percentage of renewables has to be?
Right now, Wisconsin has a 10% renewable portfolio standard. Michigan is on the verge of adopting a pretty aggressive renewable clean energy standard is what they're calling it. Right now, they don't have one. They had one, but it expired in 2021, I believe, and they haven't had one. But they're looking at adopting a clean energy standard that would require our Michigan members to be 100% clean energy by 2045. But the interim, they'd have to, I think it's 60% by 2035. And so that'll be, but our Michigan members are a pretty small piece of WPPI.
Right.
So we will be able to meet the Michigan requirement with our portfolio, even as it is today.
Is the renewable energy purchase more expensive than coal or natural gas when you're talking about that wholesale market?
That's a challenging question to just say yes or no to. The challenge, I'll skip ahead. So the challenge we have with renewables energy is the output. Obviously, it's weather dependent. And so.
Well, both solar and wind are, right? I mean, they're both-
100%, solar and wind, weather dependent. Great energy resources when they are operating. This is our solar resource at Point Beach Solar, came online in 2021. It's a little bit more than 100 megawatt resource, but it's capped at 100 megawatts. I asked our staff to look at, find 3 days in the same month, a sunny day, a cloudy day, and an intermittent cloudy day. And this is actual data of the output from that resource during 3 days in June of 2022. The sunny day, it came up with the sun, 100%, ran perfect all day long at 100%, and then obviously came down as the sun set. Great resource, put out a lot of great energy that day, very cost effective. A cloudy day, probably, rain most of the day, just a dreary, June day. We got almost no output out of that resource. The sun broke through a little bit near the end of the day, and we got some output, but not much at all. And an intermittent cloudy day, up and down all day long, looked like a guy having a heart attack. Clouds come in, come out, and the intermittent nature of that resource, this is the output that we got from that. So when it's running and we're getting energy out of it, it's a cost-effective resource. But we also have to make sure that we have other resources available to step up when there isn't sun. The same thing on a wind resource. Again, this is our wind resource. 3 days in May of this year, a windy day, a calm day, and an intermittent day. Again, same type of, it's about a 55 megawatt resource. On a windy day, really good output, very cheap energy. On a very calm day, almost nothing. On the intermittent, up and down kind of intermittent wind, again, up and down. So we have to have other resources available to serve, or we buy from the market when the sun's not shining and the wind's not blowing.
Do you pay for, so if you have to go on a flash market like that, do you have to pay more than if you need energy quickly?
Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. Sometimes market energy prices can be relatively low. If it's for whatever reason, there's a lot of excess generation in the market, it can be relatively low. Other days, it could be high. And so we have to plan, so that your load is a nice bell curve. We have to make sure we have resources for that entire time period, not just, when our resources are running.
Do these renewable facilities also do energy or frequency modulation where they have large battery banks as well, storing energy?
We have looked at,
That would be BESS.
what's that?
BESS.
Yeah, bulk energy storage systems. We've actually talked to so our Point Beach Solar, we have a 20-year purchase power agreement with NextEra Energy. They're the ones that built it for us, and we buy all the output. We've actually gone to them over the last year and had them do an analysis of the cost effectiveness of adding a battery large enough that, would be of value. And we've looked at that. It's just not at this point economical to do that. It's more economical to rely on the market to fill in the gaps when we don't have power coming from Point Beach Solar or from one of our wind resources. Our models are showing that battery will be a cost-effective resource, probably in the early 2030s, and we're obviously watching that closely. When it makes economic sense for us to add battery to our renewable resources or to a new renewable resource, we absolutely would go down that path. The challenge that we have is, battery right now is about a 4-hour solution. You need more than 4 hours to get through, a day like that, or to get through, a wind day where you've got no wind. You need more than just a 4-hour solution. So it will be part of the solution to get to 100% clean, but it's not the only solution. We need new generation technology that is being developed. We've talked to developers that are early on the stages of developing new types of generation. Small modular nuclear reactors is one. We actually met with the developers over the last year, starting in the fall of last year through early 2023, where there was a consortium of utilities in this part of the country that met and got data from a developer on SMR technology, and were poised to move forward if it was cost effective. It was not.
We move forward with what, small nuclear energy creation?
Small modular reactor. This type of, this particular developer was looking at they could stack up to, I believe, 12 72 megawatt nuclear generators, almost like standalone batteries in one facility at one footprint, and that was their design. So they actually they're the first ones to get a license from the NRC to move forward with it. They actually have a contract to develop the first one with an organization similar to WPPI out in Utah. Whether or not it's supposed to be online by 2029, 2030. We're all watching it very closely. We want it to happen. We know that the first one's going to be expensive. We anticipate that, and we're hoping that by the time they've done 10, 15, 20 of these, that it'll be a cost-effective resource. We didn't know what the costs were. You get cost projections from salesmen, they're one thing. When you actually dig into the data and the numbers, you find out not so rosy a picture from a real-world economic standpoint. So we have not moved forward with that project, but we've met with other developers of new generation technology that is at early stages that have a lot of promise. So we have until, we've got time to transition our portfolio from what it is today to a carbon-free portfolio by 2045, 2050 timeframe.
I
We
didn't
do
mean-
need new technology.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to dominate the question.
Oh, no,
but
that's fine.
You predicted my question on the nuclear. I'm glad you guys are looking into it. Does WPPI and its members consider nuclear carbon-free?
Yes.
Okay.
We would consider that carbon-free.
And the last question I have on this aspect of your presentation is the push for EV vehicles creating more problems with our grid? Not so much probably here as maybe like a Phoenix or an LA or something.
Yeah,
but-
I've talked to some of my peers in California, in Arizona. It's not been an issue. It's more of an issue for the distribution utilities.
Okay.
Because from our standpoint, it could be a very good load because we can incentivize customers to charge off-peak. Our costs are more expensive from, noon till 6, 7 o'clock at night. That's when power gets more expensive. From 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., it's the cheapest power that we have available because you have a lot of excess generation and it's available. And so we can incentivize customers to charge your cars off-peak. That actually increases the sales for the utility and actually reduces overall cost to everybody else. So that can be a benefit from a power supply standpoint. We don't see EVs ramping up so fast that we couldn't keep up on the power supply piece, but the challenge will be at the distribution level. A lot of municipal utilities, you might serve 4 homes off a 125 kVA transformer. That was a typical design. If you put 3 or 4 EVs in those 4 homes, all of a sudden that 25 kVA transformer is not enough. And so you'll have to think about that. We actually took steps 2 years ago, worked with a design engineering firm and got some grant money to study that very issue. And again, we looked at it and put together more or less a best practices manual again with input from our member system engineers and our staff. And when you've seen a ton of growth in Oconomowoc. You are one of the fastest growing communities amongst the WPPI members. So when you're putting in new subdivisions, your staff is thinking about that. Should we build a system today that is not ready to serve 3 or 4 EVs per circuit tomorrow? So you're building systems today that will handle it, or can be easily converted by putting in a bigger transformer. Maybe you're going to serve 2 homes off a 25 kVA transformer and try to serve 4. And so that's happening today. But the next 10 years, we're not seeing the EV penetration going so quickly in the next 10 years that it's going to be a problem either for our members or for us from a power supply. After 10 years, every manufacturer has discussed 2035 as sort of their tipping point where they're going to be moving away from internal combustion and moving to just EVs as their dominant vehicles. When that happens, you're going to see a much quicker adoption rate. And then, again, I think it'll be more of an issue for our distribution utilities than what it is for us. We can add a lot of power very quickly. You know, we can add a 50 megawatt generator relatively quickly. So we can project ahead when we need to add resources.
Thank you.
Good question.
Yeah.
Great conversation, yeah.
Yep. Really, I think I've covered the waterfront on the issues that I wanted to cover with you all.
Council members, do you have any questions?
I do.
Karen?
Thank you for being here. So when I got on council initially, I think maybe we had mid-40s as far as members. There's 51 now. What's the criteria for taking on new members? And do we realize economies in doing that, but maybe only up to a certain point?
Yep.
What's that?
Good question. I think the last members that we added were in the mid-2000s, so 2005, 6 time period. So it's been a while. We haven't added any new members in the 12 years I've been at WPPI. We've had conversations with entities that could join WPPI. We actually, a couple of years ago, was approached by a utility in the UP of joining WPPI. We did the analysis. It would have been beneficial for that utility, but not for WPPI, and so we declined. I can't stand in front of my 51 board members and say, we'd like to add another utility, but you all are going to pay higher rates to do that. Makes no sense. It has to be a win-win. It has to be beneficial to our 51 members, and obviously that entity's not going to join unless they see it a benefit for themselves. So you have to find that sweet spot. It's going to happen at some point. I truly believe that it will. We're getting into a point now with, since the recession in 2008-9, power on the open market was relatively cheap compared to embedded cost utility average power. But as I showed you on where things have gone, market energies have gotten more expensive. And also, the amount is continuing to shrink. And so I think there's going to be more cost pressure on utilities that are trying to do 5-year short-term contracts. They're going to look for a utility that has assets and has a longer projection or a longer look at their portfolio. So it's going to happen. What we have done in the last couple of years is we do a lot of services. This is one example. We have a technology suite that has integrated a very robust billing system called Northstar. With our member utilities have been putting in advanced metering, AMI, and we've tied all that together through a very robust technology suite that no other organization like ours provides to their member communities. We have offered this to a couple of municipals in Wisconsin that are not members of ours. We've done it at where we make a margin, which helps hold down the cost that you all pay, and they very much have benefited from this technology, but they're paying a market cost for it, whereas our members pay a blended cost between their wholesale rate and a fee for the service. So we have extended services to non-members. We would only do that if it's a benefit to our 51 members, which we've been able to do with this technology.
How many of you on council, I'm just asking, have been out to actually see our facility, the WPPI facility in the Madison area? If you haven't, it's absolutely fascinating. The first year I was on council, I was on utility committee, and it is absolutely fascinating to see what you guys do out there. The big monitors and screens and how they're predicting, you know, the different loads and stuff.
We have an open door to every one of our members. We've actually hosted member meetings at our office. So we've had a couple of members that had their utility commission or their city council have their local meeting at our office, and we've hosted that. But we're always open, as Mark knows, anytime. We'd be happy to host any number of you to come to the office. We'll show you how we operate and how we interface on the open market from a power supply standpoint.
Like watching the stock market.
It is. I mean, we have staff that's all they do. 24/7 is manage that portfolio and manage our interface with the markets. So with that, any other questions? Be happy to, I'll answer all questions all night long, but I'm sure you've got other business to move on to.
Well, thank you very much for coming to.
Mayor, I appreciate the
share.
time,
Yeah,
really.
Absolutely.
So, and I'll let Sturgeon Bay next year, they get Oconomowoc presentation, so.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, maybe we can put together a meeting or a road trip.
Yeah,
and,
that'd be great.
Take a look.
That'd be great. Obviously, Greg is the guy to talk to. He could make all that happen for you.
Great. Thanks.
Again, thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. At this time, are there any other comments or that any of the audience would like to make to council? We're at the comments and suggestions portion from citizens of the agenda. Are there any comments anybody would like to share with the council today? With no comments heard, we'll move on to item 7. I'd like to entertain a motion for consent agenda items 7A and B.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? On to committee reports, we'll go on to utilities. Consider act on resolution 23-R3157, wastewater budget amendment for the Northeast Regional Park Lift Station, construction management. Mr. Freeber.
Well, this has to do with the Northeast Regional Park Lift Station. Due to some overruns that we had with the surveying of the site, connection of the walking path, ADA requirements, and poor soil for the driveway, we had we're gonna have an overrun for the construction management, approximately $8,000. So I'm asking that the budget amendment for the construction management be increased by $8,000.
Questions or comments from Mr. Freeber?
Yes.
Like to
Is this the only budget amendment we will be seeing, or will there be more?
For the Northeast Regional Park, there will be one more. This is for the construction management of the project. There will be one for the project also later on.
And do we know how much that is?
I believe it's going to roughly be around $32,000, above the 2.3 million that the project is.
Like to entertain a motion?
So moved, Rozak.
Second.
Any further comments or discussion? Call roll, please.
Alderman Shell Pepper.
Aye.
Alderman Maroney.
Aye.
Alderman Douglas.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Altman Cloth.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Mulder.
Aye.
On to new business, consider act on budget amendment for third quarter grants and donations received July 1st, 2023 through September 30th, 2023.
I will handle that one real quick. As you know, we come quarterly with any grants and donations we received. This past quarter is just a little over $59,000, with the bulk of that being for donations for the K-9 funding, and then we've also received quite a bit of money for pickleball maintenance fund. So that was good to see. So our number, $59,057.86.
Like to entertain a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any further questions, comments? Call roll, please.
Alderman Shell Pepper.
Aye.
Alderman Maroney.
Aye.
Alderman Douglas.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Altman Cloth.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Mulder.
Aye.
On to our next item, consider act on resolution 23-R3158 for wastewater treatment rate adjustment.
This is the item that John Chu walked through during the committee of the whole for the 2024 rates for wastewater. I know that we talked a general 6.5% increase. The rates connected to this resolution are for all the rates that go through the utility plant. That's why it's not just specified that way. There's 3 other pages of the rates that are connected to this.
Questions or comments for Mr. Shu or for Mr. Fry? I'd like to entertain a motion.
Rozak, so moved.
Second.
Any further questions, comments? Call roll, please.
Alderman Shell Pepper.
Aye.
Alderman Maroney.
Aye.
Alderman Douglas.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Altman Cloth.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Mulder.
Aye.
Next up is consider act on the 2024 utility budgets.
Once again, John Chu walked through the 3 budgets, answered questions during the committee of the whole. Council has recommended, so we'll look for a recommendation.
So moved, Ellis.
Second.
Any further questions or comments? Call roll.
Alderman Shell Pepper.
Aye.
Alderman Maroney.
Aye.
Alderman Douglas.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Altman Cloth.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Mulder.
Aye.
Next up, consider act on the adoption of the 2024 City of Oconomowoc budget.
Thank you, Mayor. During the public hearing portion, I gave a brief summary of the process that we went through and some of the major items that were contained in the budget. I think one of the larger impacts was the council's decision to use unexpected revenues that we had come in order to completely fund the $1.5 million Concord Road project, which is a projected savings of $300,000 for our residents. So overall, it's a balanced budget. It meets the state levy limits. Our mill rate went down slightly. The average $400,000 house will see a $94 increase on their city portion of the taxes.
Like to entertain a motion?
Motion to approve the 2024 budget.
Second.
Any further questions or comments? Alderman Shellpepper.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm going to be voting in favor of the budget tonight. I think we're doing a lot of good things with this budget on the public safety, infrastructure, and improving our community assets front. We're funding our squad car replacement program, our plow truck replacement programs. We're funding new tasers and handguns for the police department. We're adding a new school resource officer in conjunction with the school district, which is sorely needed. It's going to provide more safety to our kids, our schools. It's a great thing to have. On the infrastructure front, Mark, the city administrator, he mentioned we're putting $2.5 million into our street program, $1.5 million specifically for Concord Road, which is really needed for the 4th and 2nd district in terms of getting that road back up to a functional condition. It's a big win for Oconomowoc and for the 2nd district to have that done. We're also replacing the retaining wall at Bender Beach, another great thing for maybe not the 2nd district, but close by. And we're replacing the parking lot at Chafee Field, which is also in the 2nd district. So we've got a lot of great investments in this budget. I had some concerns with some of the positions that we were adding to it, one being the communications position, the other one being the DPW locator. But considering the circumstances, it's been decades since a new utility employee has been added. With the new added shared revenue that we're getting, this isn't an increase on the levy, and the communications position, as we said earlier, is part of the room tax. That's funded through room taxes from the hotels. Again, it's not from our tax levy. So overall, it's a budget that's making a lot of great investments in our community, and I'm proud to vote in favor of it.
Thank you for the summary. Any other comments?
Thanks.
Alderman Rozak.
Sounds like we did too much improvements in spending in District 2.
Saying it's about time, right?
Noted next year, District 3 would like some more money flowing our way. I know, great comments, good summary. The biggest thing that I think came out of the budget this year was, we were able, because of the fiscal responsibility this council has shown for probably a decade-ish, and city staff, we were able to cash fund our road program this year completely, which is practically unheard of. So for anyone that's watching or in the crowd, that is unheard of for a community our size. Other communities, cash fund some stuff, but that's a lot. And it's because we made the right decisions throughout all the budgets between staff and the city council. So kudos to the staff, good work. This isn't just the only vote. We spent hours looking at this, so.
Any other comments? Alderman Ellis.
Yeah, I too was thinking about this just last night, and I'm actually in favor of this budget. And one of the reasons being is because of the fact that we are beginning the process of utilizing some of the funds that past councils have put aside for the sole purpose of our citizens and for our roads. And I really do appreciate the hard work that staff has done and the many phone calls that I had and your patience with me trying to understand everything. So I think we really did a good job on this one.
Call roll, please.
Alderman Shellpepper.
Aye.
Alderman Maroney.
Aye.
Alderman Douglas.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Altman-Cloth.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Mulder.
Mr. Mayor, I just, want to extend appreciation to everybody that worked on this budget. Unfortunately, Lori Sullivan, who would have presented tonight, was unable to be here. Lori does a lot of work, but she also has Hannah, who's here tonight, working on this. But it takes a whole team, and it takes probably about 7 or 8 months to do the budget process, to bring the document that we do bring to you. But it's the finance department, but as I mentioned with the utility budget, it's all the department heads working with their superintendents and their crews to figure out what's the bare minimum they need to maintain all the services for the city. And this year they did an excellent job, and I appreciate the 8-0 vote on the budget, so thank you.
Well said by everybody. Thank you.
Can be vetoed.
Let's move on. We can also find a new city attorney.
Please.
Close.
In April. I echo all those wonderful comments about the budget, and well done, everybody. It seems like it goes very quick when you see us passing these budgets, but there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes to make it happen, so well done, everybody. Let's move on to report. Consider on setting the 2023 property tax levy for the 2024 budget.
So the levy is $16,132,660.
Entertain a motion.
Move to set, yeah.
Second.
Any further discussion? Call roll, please.
Alderman Shell Pepper.
Aye.
Alderman Maroney.
Aye.
Alderman Douglas.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Altman Cloth.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Mulder.
Aye.
Report on the status of the jurisdictional offer regarding the parcel owned by Fleming Investments LLC at 1400 South Summit Avenue.
The easement, no, the CSM. So while this is coming up, everybody, you may or may not recall, it's been a while. We've been having discussions with the Flemings who have the property that you will see on the northernmost portion of this certified survey map. It's a little strip mall, it's got the Sherman-Williams, it's got the new smoothie place that I like, by the way. It's really good. They have been the only entity in the entire 3-mile or 2-mile stretch that has not agreed to allow us to remove and eliminate the restrictions that were put in place by Basari years ago. You, as a common council, recognize that that's a problem because in the area that's just to the west of them, we have a stormwater pond. And we have eliminated Unity Drive. I did not move forward with giving them the jurisdictional offer, which would be the hammer to start to finish, I should say, the condemnation process, because they have constantly said that they would be amenable to giving up every other one of the restrictions, other than, you're gonna have to look really close, but running north and south here is an easement, which they believe will assist them in getting truck deliveries to the Sherman-Williams. We have talked about the fact that they've got a appraisal that says that costs them a lot of money in diminution of value. We don't agree, but that's what they did. So when that road was eliminated, it was added to the parcel that the Panera is going on. So if you could go to the next slide.
Sure.
What I did was in trying to accommodate them, and we've been working with them and just trying to appease them. In order to try to address their issue, I have convinced Wangard, who has worked with Panera, to give an easement for the benefit of the public and specifically for the benefit of Lot 1, which is the parcel that they own, a ingress and egress easement over exactly the area that they have an easement in place. So we'll wipe out all of the old restrictions and easements. This will be in its place, and at least according to them, they won't have a beef with it, what they've told us before. We'll see, what the future brings. I bring this to your attention to let you know why I have not gone forward with the condemnation. I've been working on this for, I think it's been 8 months since you did the jurisdictional offer authorization. I can now go forward, issue a jurisdictional offer, knowing that we've tried to address their issue. They can take it, or they can sue us. That's where we're at.
When do you?
Alderman Mulder?
Is that easement then going through the Panera parking lot?
Yep,
So they can use the parking lot to?
yep. And Panera had to redesign all of their parking and everything in order to accommodate a truck to go through. So, that's what we did.
Stan, so when do you plan to issue the jurisdictional offer then?
As soon as I have an agreement with Lawn Guard that he's gonna pay for everything when we get sued.
Okay. So they have not agreed to this deal yet, though?
Who? Fleming's?
The Fleming property?
No. No, they wanted to see it. I knew if I sent it to them, they would just pick it apart and we'd be in the same position, because I've sent them many, many things over 3 years. I'm going to present them with this and say, look, we've done everything as a city we could possibly, way more than we could possibly do. And so, here it is. We've tried to help you. This is the best we can do.
Does our vote on the jurisdictional offer go stale at any point?
Nope. We're good.
Okay.
Any questions on this reporter update for Attorney Riffle? Thank you, Stan.
Hi, Matt.
Do we have any staff reports?
No, sir.
No staff reports. Comments from Alderman? Oops.
I'm sorry, I jumped too soon. I apologize.
Okay.
2 things. One, feel free to leave all your binders for the city budget and the utility budget at your station. If you do not want to carry them home tonight, we will recycle them. And then I did send out an email, but I wanted to make an announcement that yesterday we were notified that the city received a $1,020,000 grant for the boat launch at City Beach. So that is excellent news. We're very thrilled with that, and we will be taking the next steps to move that project forward. Thank you.
Great. Any comments from Alderman? Alderman Altman-Cloth.
I was just wondering if by, maybe the next meeting or 2 meetings from now, we can get an update on what we're doing with Oz Plaza and with the bathrooms. Public restrooms, I know at one time we talked about them behind City Hall.
Okay.
That's all.
Any other Alderman comments?
Yeah. At some point, I'd like to have a update on what's happening with the tunnel.
Yeah, we have a little update, and we'll be able to get that to you shortly. We've been working with the county on a ribbon cutting for the opening of the tunnel. The delay for the tunnel are the railings that go on both sides, and those have to be approved by the DOT. So as soon as we have that final date and time, which we're really close, our city administrator will email everyone. Great. With no other comments from the mayor, I'd like to go into closed session. The closed session is to discuss the Rockwell TIF option per Wisconsin State Statute 19.851E, deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specific public business wherever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, specifically to discuss the consideration of expenditures for the amendment of TID 8, Rockwell Partners. So at this point, we will be going into closed session. I'd like to entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Nope, you have to do a roll call.
Call
always.
roll, please.
Alderman Shell Pepper.
Aye.
Alderman Maroney.
Aye.
Alderman Douglas. Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Altman Cloth.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Oh, we stay here.
Alderman
Why can't we stay
Spiegelberg.
here?
just stay here?
There's like nobody in the building.
Whatever.
Elvis is left the
We
building.
should. Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Mulder.
Aye.
Okay. Well, I didn't notice it that we were going into room 3.